Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're at. Very excited to be here with Kristie Grzywinski. I hope I said that right. I always have trouble with that W right in the middle there. We're going to be talking about the new edition, SQF Edition 9, and some very exciting changes from my perspective as an auditor. Definitely looking forward to this new edition. And, just from, again, my perspective, I think some of these changes are definitely notable and need discussing. We're going to be talking more toward the end, I think, about some tools that SQF has to help you with the navigation from 8 to 9. And so definitely very excited this morning to be talking about this. And I think we'll have plenty to discuss. So introducing myself here briefly, I am the Senior Food Safety Manager for Safe Food Alliance. So I do perform SQF audits, among other things. We offer consulting. We do a kind of a wide variety of training on different subjects and customized training for customers as needed. As you can imagine, I think all of you have experienced a lot of virtual work this year, and no different for us. We're doing most of our training and part of our auditing as well, even virtually this year. So it's been quite the year, the last 12 months for all of us. But anyhow, I'm going to go ahead and introduce Kristie now and let her kind of jump in. So Kristie Grzywinski has made a career of helping food companies create systems that ensure the safe production of food, including 11 years working with the National Restaurant Association's Serve Safe program. Now, as technical director for the Food Industry Association's Safe Quality Food Institute, or SQF, Kristie is responsible for supporting the delivery of a consistent, globally recognized food safety and quality management program based in sound scientific principles. She particularly shines at developing mind-blowing training programs and otherwise making complex topics approachable. And I love the fun bio that you sent, Kristie, here. And Kristie enjoys binge eating jalapeno potato chips and tiny chocolate, but not necessarily at the same time. So thank you for that fun bio. I love it. So anyhow, so Hillary, I think we were going to go ahead and have Kristie jump in and start by sharing her slides, if that's okay now. So I don't know, Kristie, are you able to hit the share screen, or do we need to give you permission for that? And while we're figuring that out, I just want to note to everybody, I see we've had a few chats come in. I want to encourage all of you. We are here to discuss things with you and not to talk at you. Yes, this is a webinar, but we are craving your questions. We want to answer them. So we definitely want to make this a discussion. So it looks like you may be able to share your screen now, Kristie.
Let me give it a try. All right. Ah, yes. All right.
Excellent.
Do you see it? Yeah. Okay. And I'll put it in presentation mode. Yeah, there we go. Okay. All right. Woo. This is the first time I've presented using Zoom. So wow. So far so good.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah.
Let me get myself a little higher in the screen there. Okay. All right. Fantastic. You ready for me to rock and roll?
Yes, go for it.
All right, let's go for it. All right, thank you so much, John, for inviting me to do this. I'm very excited to do this. My name is Kristie Grzywinski, or if you want to pronounce it properly, it would be Kristie Grzywinski, but I answer to either one. Kristie is usually sufficient. And once I hear Kristie, I know it's me you're talking about. So no worries. I am the technical director here at SQFI. I've been here for just about 10 years. The time has flown by, and I've been here since edition 7 for a point of reference. So we're going to run through some of the changes to edition 9. We're going to do it in a fun little Q&A format. So John and I he's going to deliver the questions, and I'm going to give you a little bit of information to fill in the blanks. But in between, if you have a question, go ahead and chat it in. And let me see if I can find the chat. I'll put that on the screen. Okay, yeah, I got the chat on the screen. So if you chat something in, I can see that. And with that, I think, how do we?
And I can go ahead and read those to you as well if you like.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that'll help too. Okay. All right.
You have to do everything.
Okay. It's like using someone else's toothbrush. So So it does the same job, but it feels just a little strange. So, okay, there's me. All right, hi, with my hair looking much better than it does today. Okay, here's our agenda for today. Oh, I see already the very first question. D more, I'm gonna make you wait till the very end, just for doing it. No, so don't worry, we will talk much about the guidance documents. So what we're gonna talk about today, real quick, there's two sets of changes to the code, and we're gonna talk about the structural changes real quick, and then we'll talk about perhaps maybe some of those technical changes, talk a little about that implementation timeline. That'll be real quick and short. Some of the frequently asked questions that we have been getting, they may be the ones that you are already getting. And then I'm going to talk about, how do you start? How do you implement these changes? We have some great tools that you can use. We're going to talk about those. So I do want to make sure that we touch on those last two bullets and some of those resources that D. Moore is already asking about. Mm-hmm. All right. This is me. Oh, no. Okay. So if I'm hovering over the chat, it doesn't like for me to do that.
Yeah.
All right. Here we go.
Kristie, you mentioned that there are some structural changes, and I know there were some significant ones this time around as opposed to edition 8 last time. So maybe you can go over some of those.
Great question, John. Let me go over some of those changes. Yeah, actually, the first thing that you're going to notice about edition 9 is that it looks different. And not knowing who all is here on the webinar, I'm assuming some of you are familiar with SQF and have SQF in place and are here to learn about those changes. So you've seen the SQF code in the past. So what you're going to see is these structural changes and the look and the feel and the format of the code. What you're going to notice is that there are even more codes than there were before. And then we mentioned some of those new codes there up on the screen: livestock, animal feed, pet food, aquaculture, dietary supplements. We are literally farm to fork and everything in between with the addition of these codes, which is fantastic. And these specifically are called out into their own code. And if you're familiar with SQF, the SQF program, that means that it's the language is customized. And the requirements are reflective of the industry itself, and the system elements, which we'll touch on, will be reflective of those industry segments as well. So additionally, based on feedback from SQF's stakeholders like yourselves, we took the opportunity to streamline the technical elements of the code to better serve to better group similar elements and reduce redundancies. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But in particular, that's what I have there up on the screen, are some of those streamlined technical elements, particularly not in the system elements, but in the technical modules. So you see that, we had hand washing kind of all over throughout. You're going to see that that's now nicely streamlined under a nice heading. So just real quick, one of the other things, here we go. You're going to see are those different codes. And here's how all those different codes align. So you're going to see, plant production there covers modules 2, 3, 4, and 5. The livestock has its own code, so it's there with module 1. So this is the alignment of the codes and the modules, and all nicely color coded so that you can see how those all fall out. A couple of the codes there down at the bottom didn't change this time around, and that's because they came out during 8.1. And they weren't ready to be updated just yet. So retail, food service, and fundamentals didn't change just yet. So we've left those because they're fairly new. The quality code, we won't really touch too much about that here in this presentation, but the quality code had one particular change. Not a lot of changes at all in the quality code, but one in particular is that now the quality code can be applied to any GFSI recognized benchmark standard. which is kind of cool because if if you're using BRC, you can add this on top of it. IFS, you can add this on top of it without having to change to SQF. You can add this focus on quality systems. Pretty cool. So anyway, that's how the codes and the modules line up. This is the codes themselves, kind of the code covers. And we have like, these cool icons that will help you, so you're going to look for your icon in our guidance documents and in our checklist. So a lot of cool structural changes like that. And then one more slide. The other cool thing that you'll see is the interior got a facelift. Not like me, but anyway, the interior got a nice little facelift, refresh, lots of nice white space and easily readable, nice readable font. And you'll see that actually I have to say, I have my code here open always at the ready, and it is nice and easily readable. A lot of nice graphics at the beginning, lots of color coding and so on and so forth. So anyway, that's what you're going to see from a structural perspective. And like I said, a lot more codes to focus on all those individual industry segments to help better serve them. So let's check and see if we do have any questions about those structural changes.
Let's see. So we do have a couple of questions about whether they're getting a copy of the slides, which we definitely will be providing that to everybody. This is important information. We want you all to have it. So Kristie, I just want to say too, the changes that you just talked about to the structure, I'm very excited about them. I think they make a lot of sense, especially as an auditor. The streamlining I think is really exciting because we'll be able to spend more time focusing on the important aspects of what we need to see in the program than trying to bounce around and fill things out as much, because there'll be less, I guess, line items overall, right? But we still retain the same very important requirements of the program. And of course, having the different sections of the standard make a lot of sense, because a food packaging company is going to be very different from primary production of plants or from animals than making a tortilla chip. So all good stuff.
Exactly. Mohammed, you have a question. Go ahead, type your question in, Mohammed. We will wait for Mohammed. While we're waiting for Mohammed to put his question in there, we'll go ahead and move ahead.
Yeah, so now part A, and a lot of people don't realize this, but part A is the section of the standard, Kristie, that talks about kind of the auditing process, right? And how all that works. That comes before the actual requirements that the sites have to meet, right? So some big changes were made there this time around as well. So if you don't mind, if you want to go over those, that'd be great.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about the significant ones. Right off like John said, the part A gives you the kind of methodology of the code. A lot of people just dive right into the requirements thinking, what do I have to implement? What is the auditor going to be looking for? But always take a moment to take a look at part A. And it provides a little bit about the audit process. Some of the, like I said, the significant changes were, you're going to have to tell us what you think about this, audience, is we changed the scoring of major nonconformities from 10 points to 5 points. And the reason we did that is when we look at our audit data, and we have Tammy Van Buren, who is our compliance manager, and she looks very closely at all that audit data. And when she looks at that, she sees lots of minors, not a lot of majors. Why is that? And we see that there are a lot of minors in systems, and perhaps if we're looking at the bigger picture, is that a system element breakdown? Is that a breakdown in that system that could have been perhaps a major? Is there impact to other systems that demonstrates that the aspects, the program, individual programs are failing, and maybe perhaps there should have been a major rather than just a bunch of one-off minors. So what we're trying to do is encourage people to not be afraid of the majors, again, using this audit as a continuous improvement device as a tool for continuous improvement. So if you're not really afraid of those majors, your boss, you're not going to meet your KPIs, or you're not going to get your bonus this year. If we lower the points on a major to a 5, maybe we're going to see more majors coming in, and this is beneficial, so that it doesn't seem less like a penalty and more like a benefit, to focus on corrective action and continuous improvement. The requirement for desk audits was for initial certification was removed. So if you have a system in place, this isn't anything that you have to worry about. This is for new audits, initial certifications. That desk audit is going away. Pros and cons to that, but basically the auditor has to review all the documents regardless. So for that initial certification, they're going to be looking at all those documents regardless. So now it's just integrated into the certification process, whereas before it was an initial step, like almost like a stage 1. This again may not be a huge impact on you as a site, but there was removal of that audit duration table, and that is used by the certification body to determine the duration of your audit, but they will still have that available to them. But I think a lot of folks got hung up on what it said. And now that's just, there's some guidance available to the CBs, just as they had before. So nothing you have to worry too much about, but I think for the folks that did worry about it, it takes away a little bit of that stress. We included in Part A the new requirements for remote audit activities. So this is something new that was allowed by GFSI, is to conduct portions of the audit remotely. And now we discuss that in a little bit of detail. And I was reviewing that before we hopped on this webinar. What are some of those parts that can be done remotely? And that is outlined in Step 8, initial certification. One last thing is, and again, this is probably something you're never even going to have to worry about, but we clarified activities when a site is suspended or fails an audit. Probably never going to see this, but we have a really nice if-then table. We show a little snapshot there on the screen. So because, for the folks that were impacted by this, this kind of explains it a little bit better. So suspensions are not necessarily a bad thing, and that's what this if-then table shows you. But this kind of just helps explain it just a little bit more. All right.
Kristie, we have oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I was just going to ask if there were any questions.
Yeah, I was just going to say we have a question from the audience here. Interesting one. May we merge SQF certification with BRC if we are already doing BRC? Interesting question.
Oh, I was going to let you answer that, John. Mr.
Okay, well, I will go ahead and comment from my perspective.
Okay.
They are 2 separate audits with separate forms that you have to fill out and turn into separate organizations. I will say there may be some time savings if you find an auditor that can do both audit standards in the same time period. They may be able to truncate the audit time a little because you're looking at a lot of the same requirements. So you may be able to gain a little bit of time if you can find an auditor that does both, but they are definitely separate standards. I don't know if there's anything you want to add to that or comment on.
Yeah. So from the certification body perspective, there are some, costs, time saving, but you do have buyers that require one over the other. And, it's not that the auditor wouldn't do justice to either. It's just that, you want to be able to give each one its due time, right? You're paying for each audit, to be perfectly honest. So you might as well give the auditor the time that they need to focus on those individual elements. Mm-hmm. I hope that answered that question. There could be, there could be some time savings in doing that. All right, let's. questions?
Okay, so we're into part B of the standard now, right? So these are the requirements that the sites have to meet. So this is what everybody is probably more focused on than anything else, is what's changed and what's new that I have to do on site, right, Kristie? So this would be module 2, which is the system elements that we're going to talk about first. And that's kind of the heart of the food safety program, if you will, that's built on top of all your prerequisite programs, right? Because module 11, which we'll talk about next, is the prerequisites like pest control and cleaning and sanitation. But here, if you don't mind going over just kind of some of the changes to module 2 and the system elements that really kind of are the heart of the SQF system.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. A great introduction. And I can just skip the first 2 lines of my notes here, because I always like to explain, that these are the system elements are those foundational programs, but you did a great job. And so many of the technical changes within part B, so there's part A, which we talked about, was kind of the methodology. Part B are all the requirements then. A lot of those technical changes in part B, in edition 9, were based on requirements from the GFSI benchmarking document. So the GFSI benchmarking document, of course, is probably why you use SQF, is because you want that benchmarking, that assurance behind it, that consistency between BRC and SQF, right? So that you don't have completely different requirements. But the benchmarking requirements document that's required of us as a certification program owner, we use that along with new science, stakeholder feedback, and you attendees are the stakeholder, and trends in foodborne illness. And those are our primary drivers behind a new addition to a code. So that's what we use when we are looking at changes to the SQF code. So I may say this is due to GFSI, and that just simply means that in that benchmarking requirements document, when it was issued last February, it was already a year ago, that was one of the drivers for us to have to make change to the standard. So one of those changes, and one of the big changes that I know that everybody is going to want to ask about, is the addition of food safety culture to the policy statement and its own requirement. So this was a requirement added by GFSI. It was something that was always covered in the SQF program, in the SQF code, but something called like management commitment and that management policy statement. Now this is kind of encompassed in that food safety culture. And what in blue blazes is food safety culture? Everybody wants to know, what's the auditor going to be looking for? Honestly, you're already doing this, but this just puts a bigger focus on it. And if you follow FDA, you're an FDA regulated plant, you're going to see that as one of their big initiatives as well, is this culture, this underlying awareness of everyone on site of food safety. So how I see it is just everything within what you do at your site feeds into the culture of your organization and the culture of food safety. So you just want to be sure that all the decisions being made are made with the interest of food safety in mind. And so the auditor, like I said, was looking for this before in terms of, say, management commitment and your policy statement. The auditor is going to look to see, how are you looking at that system holistically? Are your employees enabled to make decisions based on food safety? Are they making it based on cost? Are they doing it to make production numbers? Are those production numbers based on food safety? All of that. So I don't think I think just like with any big change to the code, people are really worried about, you all may be worried about, what's the auditor looking for? Am I doing this right? But we all make it work in the end. It's a lot of what you're already doing. And it's not that the auditor is going to have more focus on it. It's just that now this is called out specifically in the code, and it's going to be in your audit report.
And there is a question on food safety culture. Actually, there are a couple here. So we do have a question. Does there need to be training conducted on food safety culture? And which is a good question, interesting one. And then also, what are we looking for in terms of a food safety culture statement?
Well, how about from the auditor perspective, John? What are you looking for in that food safety culture statement, that requirement in 211?
Well, so one thing that I would point out is that we're not looking for anything generic. We're looking for something that is specific to your company that management can stand behind, right? So when we're looking at food safety culture, we are looking at what goes on day in and day out, even when nobody's looking at you, right? We're looking at kind of like integrity is what you do when nobody's watching, right?
Yeah.
We're looking for a culture where food safety is everyone's job, not a culture where when you bring up food safety, they say, oh, go talk to her or to him because they're the food safety person, right? And so that can take many shapes and forms, right? But we're looking for, that kind of element in the program, whatever that means to your company, so that it's a living, breathing system that you're building on. So food safety culture isn't, do we have it, yes or no? Food safety culture is a continual process of getting better.
And
right.
what are those things? So as you know, John, we just released some new training materials, our implementing SQF system training program, and it takes a different approach than we had in the past, in that we are looking at this whole system. You do your internal audit, you have an SQF audit, you may even have your BRC audit. You have a process to implement corrective actions. You do a root cause analysis, right? So you're looking at all of those programs, and you're looking to see not just to fix that root cause is what I say, but there's all these other, what I say, those contributory factors. I always say that one program, a failure of one program impacts the entire system. And I always say you're also looking at those contributory factors, or the things that are impacted by that failure in your system. So by that identified nonconformance. So I think while you're doing your root cause analysis, I think you're looking at what else did this impact, and I always think of, approved supplier, within a manufacturing plant, something changed within the formulation you didn't realize, and now you have an allergen in your plant. How did that happen? You're going to look at your approved supplier program, but then what else is impacted by that? Now you need to retrain people. Now you need to update your specification. You need to update your finished product specification and your labeling procedure. So all of those things that were impacted by that one change by your supplier. And to me, that's your culture of food safety, is anticipating that, expecting that, and implementing that.
Yeah,
so
sure.
so again, those are things that you're already doing.
And we've got a lot of questions coming in, and so we'll do our best to address them all. But just touching on food safety culture and how to measure it.
Yeah.
We got a couple of questions in that vein, and I think I would refer people to a couple of resources, and you can feel free to add, Kristie. But Frank Giannis's book is still kind of a classic. Actually, he's got 2 books out pertaining to food safety culture. Food Safety Australia and New Zealand has a great document program out there that you can use as a metric system. I know BRC has a program in place you can refer to, and then of course SQF's guidance when it comes out is going to be great and helpful as well.
Yes.
So
yeah.
But I think we want to make sure that we keep going and get through all these requirements as well. So now one of the
we'll talk about some of those resources towards the end as well. And we do have a couple of good ones for you to use, including the ones that John mentioned.
Yeah, so if you want to touch on, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's fine.
Both of us are really energized by this. Tell, I hope by watching us, that this is really where our passion lies, Kristie and I both. And so anyhow, so there is a requirement for a backup practitioner, which you may want to touch on, and we also have a question from Prakash about, is there a requirement for a backup PCQI? So I can back you up on answering that once you give your answer if you like. But yeah, a virtual high five. But if you want to go ahead and take that one on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So that's actually one of the points that I have here on the screen is additional requirements for staff and to be organized and to meet food safety objectives. We designate now in the code designate that backup practitioner, whereas it was always a good idea before, but now we've called it out very specifically within the code. So again, all of these things kind of pull up into your food safety culture, making sure that you always have somebody who's responsible for it. as far as a backup PCQI, again, this standard SQF is removed from any sort of regulatory requirement. So again, this is a global standard. It's used internationally. And so it's not something that we specifically call out, but honestly, that's something you would want to look at within your site. Do we need to have this backup PCQI, this person, preventive controls certified individual in an FDA plan? So something that you would want to think about. Not all plants are going to need that. Not all sites are going to need that, but do you need that at your site, right? Is that something, a high risk product that might need that? So again, if you look at the requirements under the 21124 food safety culture, I think it gives you some great guidelines on staffing and resources that is really going to help you with that.
Kristie, too, one of the questions that I always ask people in training when they ask about backup is, okay, look, if you're going to be gone for 2 weeks, are they going to shut the plant down? They're not, right? So and part of the SQF system requirements too, and along the vein of crisis management and also just having a management system in place and having training and backup, you need to have people that can back you up. Does that mean you formally need two PCQI? Not necessarily, but you need to look at those key activities that need to happen and make sure that you have somebody that can handle them while you're gone.
Exactly. And that's really ultimately what this is. That's your culture of food safety, is that there's somebody there who not only just knows what to do, but at a higher level. If you have to recall a product, is there somebody there? And that's just part of your culture of food safety, right? Okay.
And we have a question from John King. What does it mean by removed requirement for desk audit for initial certification? And it sounds like they are in the process of getting SQF certified for the first time.
Okay, all right, so then that's confusing. Yeah, so initially it was, there were two stages to an initial certification. There was an initial desk audit where there was a review of documentation. So within the code, you see in the code, it says document and implement for every requirement. So anywhere where it said document, that's part of the desk audit. Where it said implement, that was part of the on-site audit, where the auditor would look to see how your documentation was then implemented. So if you're a new site, there no longer is a requirement for this separate, distinct document review that was held before the on-site audit. So it's not that it's going away, it's just now integrated into that audit process. It's still there where all that documentation is reviewed, just as it is within a recertification audit. So hopefully that helps you understand, for an initial certification, it isn't this now new separate step. It's just integrated.
Yeah, and I would just say too that during that desk audit, we did often find things that companies had missed in their implementation. And so one of the things that we're going to be recommending even more often now, before a site be certified to SQF for the first time, that they consider doing what we call a pre-assessment or a mock audit. And you can contact us about that. Our certification body can perform those for you. And in fact, we could just do a document, a version of a mock audit and not even necessarily need to come on site, just do that virtually, just to kind of look at, okay, the document and the implement, we can look at your documents and tell you what's missing, right? Because it may be that you implemented it fine, but the procedure needs more meat to it, or maybe you missed something. And doing that additional step before your first certification is just very, very helpful to make it a lot smoother during your first audit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that, if they don't want to contact you, have somebody come out, that's something that, the site can do themselves. Again, you're going to look for anything that says document and implement, and you're going to say, what document do I have, So, and I think our checklists kind of pull that out, if I'm not mistaken, at least they did in the past, is, the things that were to be documented were pulled into a separate list. At least you could look at the 8.1 and it says, whatever was to be part of that desk audit. So anything that was documented, that's like a good check before you go to the actual site audit, the actual on-site implementation audit, say, do I have all my documentation in place? You know, I mean, that's a great first step, you know, for the site to do themselves. Anywhere you could do a Control F on the electronic document and find the word document, and where it says document, you know, see if you have that document ready.
Now we have a little bit of a technical question for you, Kristie, from Christian. Actually, I was talking to him about this a week or two ago. So good to see you on here this morning. So let's see if we can kind of touch on this a little bit. So section 2332I. So I don't know if you want to flip to that 2332.
Okay. So I had my code. That's what I get for waving it around.
we got you now, and you said you had it, so we're gonna make you look something up.
And my manufacturing code is Christian in the manufacturing.
And I don't know if this refers to 8, but let me read the question to you, and maybe you'll be able to touch on it. So it implies that commands for high-risk foods must meet the SQF requirements. Although SQF does not directly state that these commands need to be SQF certified, it makes it difficult for a processing facility to say or justify that their high-risk command meets the requirements when they only have a GFSI recognized GMP audit.
Okay, I think maybe perhaps I understand, and you can fill in if I missed anything out of what he said there, because you can see it. So yes, that was one of the kind of changes it was one of the changes that we made in the code, just to clarify that really. The co-manufacturers, the expectation is if you are producing product for an SQF certified site, that the co-man is following SQF, you know, requirements, right? And so I believe that it is due to GFSI that we cannot require that kind of self-serving sort of loop. But it is the site's responsibility to make sure that that co-manufacturer is following the SQF requirements, and whether that's through, you know, an internal audit or, you know, a site audit by the site, you know, or they make them go through a GFSI audit, through an SQF audit. You know, that's how that's to be met. So that does need to be verified by the site, that the site is following, the co-man is following SQF. What were you going to add, John? Anything?
Well, no, and that's a good way to put it. And I think part of this is just kind of the food safety side of business practices, right? So you, as a food manufacturer who is getting something co-manufactured by somebody, you're going to tell them what requirements need to be met, or what you're asking for, what you're specifying, right? SQF talks a lot about specifications. So you're not going to necessarily tell them you have to be SQF certified, but you're going to say, under my SQF program, these are the requirements that I need you to meet. So then you could look at their FSSC or BRC audit or whatever it is, compare that to what you're requiring of them and make sure that it's met, right? So, you know, just like under FSMA, right? We're required to make sure that certain suppliers are meeting the FSMA regulations. It doesn't mean that they're getting a FSMA audit. It means that I am somehow looking at their other audits and other things and to make sure they meet those requirements. And that's the way I would look at it, is you've got to define what you need them to do, and then you've got to confirm that they're doing it.
Exactly. Bottom line, and that's the intent behind that. Exactly.
Okay. Now, I don't want to skip over any questions. We do have a ton of those. Maybe we do one more and then we go to the next section.
Okay, go ahead.
Maybe we can. Would unannounced audits qualify for the option of remote audit activities?
Can you? Maybe I'm not understanding the question.
So if they have an unannounced audit that they are expecting, then would there be remote audit activities as part of that? And I would just say, from my side of things, usually the remote audit portion is the first day. So of the audit, and then we show up after the remote part to do the on-site inspection and confirm the records to back up what we already looked at in terms of procedures, Kristie. So I don't think that would be very easy to do. You could talk to your CB about what their procedure is, but it would be a little tricky to call, hi, it's 8:15, let's connect on your computer and look at your procedures. Might be a little tricky, but that's a good question for your CB, don't you think?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'm glad you took that, because at first I wasn't understanding, but yeah, that's perfect. I'm so glad that you took that, because that's more from the certification body's perspective and how that's executed. Yeah, it would be a little bit challenging, but yes, remote audit activities can be conducted for an unannounced audit, as far as I understand. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and it may be something that you could dig into a little bit more with your CB and get an answer.
Yes, definitely. Ask your certification body about that. Yeah, yeah. As we're in a whole new world with these remote audit activities, right? So we're
Definitely.
all learning together to do things remotely, like we're doing this. Yeah.
Well, so I would dare to wager that this next section, module 11, maybe the changes are a little less significant than 2, right? Because we still have probably 6 or 7 questions in here about module 2 that we can probably circle back to hopefully. But if we could maybe touch on, if you don't mind, Kristie, going over some of the changes in module 11, the site standards, the GMP prerequisites, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I'm going to talk about a great resource. I might as well just talk about it right now. So because we're not getting into, all the changes, but there are some fabulous resources on our website, which is the change document. I'm looking over here at my other computer because quite frankly, I had pulled it up before this to kind of look through, to anticipate, what are some of those changes that you're looking at. They are great documents. So those are on the website, and I'll show you where they are on the website as we get towards the final slide. So they are called our change summary documents, and they're for our codes, the individual codes, so that you can see the changes in 2 and 11 and 2 and 10 and 2 and 7. You can go right to the one that you need and see all the changes that were made. So that being said, in part B, in the elements, not in the system elements, but in those GMPs, GAPs, those requirements, those specific requirements, a lot of what you're going to see is an alignment of the requirements. I have to say, our team did a wonderful job organizing things, and I'm a very organized and neat and tidy person. So to see all these elements grouped together under some really nice headings, it's very intuitive. Like I said, you would see hand washing signs, kind of all over module 11, and now they're all very nicely under one heading, just one requirement. So that's a lot of what you're going to see. So it's probably screwed up the numbering on your policies and procedures and your manual, but now I don't think we're going to have to change these too often because they're nicely aligned and reduced a lot of the redundancies. Some of the ones that you see here, ventilation, a lot of these changes are minor. So there's not a lot of significant changes within those modules. Ventilation, so 11.161 more appropriately covers internal ventilation. Before it was just around cooking. Now it's kind of, it's more encompassing. We had air testing for high risk processes. So think about it. In a high risk plant, producing some sort of salads or dips or something like that, you want to know the impact of your indoor air and the air coming in on those processes. And this comes from actually an incident that had happened where the air was coming into, I'm not quite sure where, but into an area where there was a high risk process being processed, high risk food being processed, and the air was coming in from the garbage area. Can you just imagine the impact? So my background's in microbiology, and just thinking of the impact to that, on the product. So anyway, they had some microbiological issues and couldn't find out where it was, and they finally realized that it was this one vent coming in there, and that's why we changed the code. So thinking about that air in your processing areas. What else do we have? So in storage and distribution and our feed standards, those 2, storage and distribution and feed. So that's 2 codes, not 3. The GFSI, based on the benchmarking requirements document, they allow the opportunity to include preventive controls rather than those strict CCP. So looking at the preventive controls. So that's kind of a nice meld where you see where GFSI is allowing the preventive controls to take precedent over a HACCP system.
So they don't have to have two plans.
Don't have to have two plans, isn't that sweet, sweet gig? And then you'll see a lot of the changes in module 11 for the growing is around water. And you know, if you're growing plants, you know, water is a huge area and risk. So a lot of what was added was based on water and evaluating the risk to the water systems. Yeah. If you're growing outside, irrigation water and those concentrated animal feeding operations and how they impact the site. So as more data comes out about these outbreaks that are happening around leafy greens, you know, us as an industry are seeing you know, what can be controlled in the environment to prevent this from happening. So looking at areas of risk in treatment, testing, and water sourcing, just around if they're growing. Same thing for indoor growing. If you're growing hydroponically, obviously water is a big darn deal. So anyway, those are some of the impactful changes in module 7, 10, and 11. But again, if you take a look at those what are they called? Change summaries, you'll see a lot more of the change.
And that's really what they need to do, right? Is they want to go ahead and take a look at the standard checklist, or at least the summary of changes, and go through their programs using that as a tool to do what we call a gap analysis or a gap assessment. All right. And so going through those changes and marking the ones you need to work on, right? Then you now have a checklist of those 12 items that you need to implement to update your system, more or less, or 15 or whatever it is, right? That's kind of the process they need to go through. So Kristie, could I float an idea here? I know we had more slides and I knew we weren't gonna have time to get through them all. As I expected, could we, I know some of the slides you have coming up these are some common questions we're getting. I think that in favor of answering the actual questions we're getting today might be better.
Yeah,
if that's okay. So could we maybe jump to the section at the end where you talk about some of the available tools SQF has, and then maybe we could just jump to the questions in the last 10 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, good, because I think that I'd love to interact and give the audience as many answers as we can.
Of course. Yeah, I agree. So what we just skipped over was asking you, what do you think was the most important changes to the code? But through your questions, we're already finding out what's hot and heavy on your mind. So we're just going to skip over. Let's talk real quick, John, about implementation. I'll just mention this real quick. So the code was published October 23rd. I can't believe that was that long ago already. Time is flying. October 3rd, so we're giving you 6 months. 7 months. So implementation, so the Audits 2 Edition 9 will begin on May 24th of this year. So anything before that date is 8.1. Anything after that date is Edition 9. So, and surveillance audits, if you were under a surveillance audit to Edition 8.1, you'll still be under your surveillance audit will be conducted to 8.1.
And if you have an unannounced audit and your window overlaps that time period, you might want to connect with your CB about it to see, or you just plan to do Edition 9.
Yeah, I think that's,
which is probably the better
words of wisdom. Yes, exactly. Prepare, and talk to your CB. You know, really. That is one of the biggest questions is okay, so if I'm waiting for an unannounced audit. One of the things is we did waive the unannounced audits until May 24th. But if that is your audit window around May 24th, definitely talk to your certification body.
Yeah.
All right, so these were some of the frequently asked questions, but honestly, your questions are right in line. So when will the checklist and guidance documents will be posted? I will talk about that. Unannounced audits, food safety culture. See, these are all the questions that you are asking already. So let's go ahead and dive into those, into some of the best practices and some of the resources, right? So let me do this one first. I don't mean to keep hopping around. So, as far as implementation, John has talked about this, do a gap analysis. Again, use these change documents, these change summaries that I'm going to show you to identify those gaps between 8.1 and 9, or between what your system is now and what it says in edition 9, and focus then on those first, right? You do yourself an internal audit against those new requirements or the programs that you already have in place, and make sure that they're meeting edition 9, and that helps you again to find those gaps. Start thinking about your food safety culture. Start thinking that holistically. This is my new I don't know what you call it, icon. Like think holistically. How do our policies impact what we do? How do our non-conformance impact our system? Start looking at that program holistically, and you'll be on the right track with your food safety culture. As John said, you might want to call in your CB to do a gap assessment or a pre-assessment audit to help verify compliance. It's time and money well spent. And celebrate the successes. If all you have to do is implement these edition 9 changes, I think you're doing pretty darn well. So that you're prepared for May 2021. Some helpful tips: don't wait. May is coming up very quickly. I can't believe that we're already so removed from October. Don't wait. Take time to understand the changes now, which is probably why you're on this webinar. Thank you. Seek advice. Focus on the intent of the code requirement. Think about why that requirement is there in place. So we talk a bit about why we made these changes. And the changes in the benchmarking requirements document in GFSI are also based on things that have happened in the industry or new science in the industry. And if you're keeping up to date as per 2.4 of the code, if you're keeping current and up to date on the regulations, you're going to be current and up to date. So, seek out industry partners. You have lots of folks here on this webinar that you can tap into. Your CB, our consultants, you have the SQF team. Use those tools and resources that I'm going to talk about in the next slide. Don't be afraid to ask for help. That's what John and his team is there for, and that's why SQF is there. Consultants and training centers as well. So here are some of these resources that I keep talking about. So we have on our website, and this, I took a screenshot of the page. This is when you go right to the SQF website. This is going to be the first thing that you see. When you scroll down just a little bit, you're going to see there's 2 things: implementation tools and webinars. And we have a couple of other webinars that we've done similar to this, that you can listen to the recording to, and maybe they were able to dive into some of the other questions that you guys had. The other thing is that one on the left, the implementation tools, and that's where you're going to find these change documents that I'm talking about, which is over here on my other computer. The checklists and the guidance documents are coming soon. Those are, you think about it, it's a big document with a lot of information, so it takes us a little while to develop. So be patient, it's there. In the meantime, if you need understanding about the intent behind something, like I said, contact John or your certification body or SQF, the consultants. We're here to help you understand what the intent are. And I put the link directly to those there. So where the tip sheets and checklists and guidance documents are, and then the webinars. And also on that webinar page is our team, the technical team, talking about some of these things. There's a short little 15-minute video on food safety culture, changes to the quality code, the laboratory, the on-site laboratory is another frequently asked question that we get. So check out the website. There's some really good resources there.
Yeah, that's one of the first things you really need to do, in my opinion, is go get the documents that summarize the requirements and start working through them. And the other thing would be, and hopefully I'll get a chance to put up a slide a little bit later, but The other thing would be go to a training for Edition 9, the practitioner training, so you can really spend some time with other food safety professionals and talk to a trainer and really kind of work through the many questions that are going to come up for you as you read through this. So, so we have a little bit of discussion going on around air testing. So I don't know if you want to touch on that at all as far as what to test for or how often or how they should gauge that. We have some discussion around twice a year, testing for APC, yeast and mold and other things. And of course, I mean, I think it's going to be specific to the plant as to what the risk is to their products and based on their infrastructure, but this is in high risk operations only that it's actually required, right? And so do you want to touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, honestly, I think that's really what I was going to say is, the requirement is for the high risk products, right? A high risk process. And so, you're thinking again, just like any of the other things, you're thinking about what is the risk? What is the potential risk here, and understanding, what could be blown in or blown from another room, what's the risk, and that's what you're going to be looking to test for. So you can work with your test company on that. They are very knowledgeable and are there to help you determine what tests to do and what level, so what are you looking for? What's a good number? What's a bad number? If you have issues with mold, and then that'll help you to determine, just like your surface swabbing, that's going to help you determine how often, where, and all that sort of stuff. So I don't have too much specific guidance, but I mean, this is, your plant and or get to know your plant and think about what could be the risk, and then try to narrow it down from there with the help from your testing company. Anything you want to add to that, John? Just knowing specifically.
No, I think that's good guidance. Our laboratory fields a lot of questions about environmental monitoring, air testing, water testing, swabbing. In fact, we've got a self-paced training on our website that you can also take on environmental monitoring. We have a section on our website for self-paced training with a few courses up there. And also we do customized work for sites as well. And I think most other organizations that do audits and training and consulting will also do the same thing. So we can come in on site and help you, or we can do a virtual training with your team and just talk about your program and give you some guidance and things like that. So I think in the last few moments here, I'm going to try to see, if you don't mind, Kristie, if I can just put some dates of some upcoming training that we have.
Yeah.
And just share that for everybody as we talk through the last requirements. Now, we are not going to get through all these questions. So Kristie, maybe I can talk to you briefly afterward and see if there's any way we can try to maybe answer some of these over email or something without, I don't want to commit you to anything. But we can connect and see if maybe we can answer some of these and send them out via email potentially to try and help with these many questions. But again, right, I mean, go get training somewhere, download the documents, right, and go through them. So it is 11, so I don't want to keep you too long, Kristie. I know you probably have other things that you need to do. So I guess with that, I mean, there are so many great questions here, and I just don't think we unfortunately have time to answer them all.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. I can work with you to get some of these answered, and maybe we can divide and conquer and group them up and get those back to you within a week or so. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah, that sounds great. So, thank you so much for your time. I know that you have many things going on, just like we all do, and really appreciate you being available. And I'm sure all the people that are in attendance today are thankful as well. We will be making the slides available. I believe we're going to make a recording available as well. So you can follow up and watch this again. We got a number of people saying thank you, some very positive comments there. So again, Kristie, look forward to seeing you again in the future. And it was, I think, a very good discussion.
Yeah, thank you all very much. This is wonderful. Thanks. Have a good day.